Hello, I'd like to speak to you a little bit today about the Arbuckle family of Donkin, and more specifically their service with Canada's military. William and Nellie Arbuckle had 8 boys and 4 girls, all raised in Donkin, and 7 of the boys went on to join the military at various times. 4 of them during the Second World War, and 3 after the Second World War, where they traveled the world on peacekeeping missions. Thankfully, they all survived and came home and raised their own families, and this is their story. Thank you. William Jr., or Willie as he was known, joined the Army in June of 1940 and served with the Cape Breton Highlanders and the Royal Canadian Army Provost Corps. That's the military police, for those that are not aware. He served in France, Germany, and Italy. He was discharged in December of 1945, but re-enlisted again 9 years later in January of 1954. And he served with the Royal Canadian Electrical and Mechanical Engineers until his final discharge in 1965. During his second service with the Armed Forces, he had various postings across Canada and a 3-year posting to Germany with NATO forces. Other than his wartime medals, he also received the Canadian Defence Medal, the Canadian Volunteer Service Medal with clasp, the NATO Service, and the Canadian Forces Decoration. He had a total of 16 years of military service. Jimmy, the next eldest, enlisted in July of 1941 and served initially with this Prince Edward Island Light Horse Regiment and thereafter with the North Nova Scotian Highlanders. He was discharged in December 1945 after 5 years of service. Jimmy's war medals seen here include the 39 to 45 Star, the France and Germany Star, the Defence Medal, the Canadian Volunteer Service Medal, and the Canadian 39 to 45 War Medal. George Arbuckle, Geordie as he was affectionately known, enlisted with his older brother in June of 1940 and also served with the Cape Breton Highlanders and then the Royal Canadian Army Provost Corps. He served in France, Germany, and Italy and was discharged in October of 1946. In all the mentions of these services, we forget that the boy spent a lot of time in England waiting for action to happen. And that was certainly the case with Geordie. While there, he fell in love and brought home his war bride, Nellie Childs. In addition to his wartime medals, Geordie was mentioned in dispatches, and a soldier who's mentioned in dispatches is one whose name appears in an official report written by a superior officer and sent to the High Command, in which his or her gallant or meritorious action in the face of the enemy is described. Geordie never did share with us the events that led to that, however. Robertson Arbuckle, Bobby, was the youngest of the boys to see wartime service. He enlisted as a teenager in 1941. He served with the Royal Canadian Army Medical Corps, and stories actually came back about things he had seen and done as a medic on the front lines of France and Germany as well. We hear a great deal today about post-traumatic stress disorder. In the Second World War, they were just getting over calling it shell shock and changing to combat fatigue instead. I'm sure Bobby could have written a book for us on it. Suffice to say, he saw and did things that no young man should have to see or do. He was discharged in October of 1945, but re-enlisted again in March of 1954, again to serve with the Canadian Army Medical Corps. He spent time as a UN peacekeeper in Korea. Aside from his wartime medals, he received also the Canadian Forces Decoration and the UN Peacekeeping Medal for Korea. He had a total of 13 years of service. The 3 younger boys, Freddie, Stuart, and Ali, all enlisted together in March of 1951, nearly 6 years after the Second World War had ended. Their first posting, however, was directly to Germany. Not there in a war capacity, but as an occupying force. In reality, their duties were more like that of policemen as the country slowly rebuilt itself after the war. Soon after Germany, Stuart and Freddie found themselves on board ship sailing across the Pacific Ocean to the Korean War. The trip lasted 21 days to cross the ocean, and thankfully, 4 days before they made landfall, the armistice was signed. They essentially became peacekeepers, even though that's not the way the role was defined at the time. The boys would go on to do peacekeeping missions, sometimes together, but mostly not. But anyways, here's their stories. Freddie, along with his brothers, joined the Royal Canadian Corps of Signals. He served for 24 years and was discharged in 1975. His service had taken him from one side of Canada to the other, and in addition to the Germany and Korea that we mentioned, he did UN peacekeeping tours in Egypt, the Congo, Cyprus, and 2 additional tours in Germany with NATO. He never said no to a new posting or a new peacekeeping mission, and indeed, he never lived more than 3 years in one place as he traveled across this country. Aside from his peacekeeping medals, he received the Canadian Forces Decoration with Clasp, the Canadian Volunteer Service Medal, and the NATO Service Medal. Stuart served with his brothers in the Royal Canadian Corps of Signals, and indeed him and his brother Freddie served together in Korea, Germany, Egypt, and the Belgian Congo. Stuart actually went back for a second tour of the Congo, as well as several postings across Canada. He served for a total of 21 years and was finally discharged in January of 1972. Medals he received include the NATO Service Medal, the UN Peacekeeping Medals with Clasp, Canadian Forces Decoration with Clasp, and the Volunteer Service Medal. Alison Arbuckle, known to all as Allie, served for 22 years in the regular forces and then an additional 2 years with the reserves. He served in Germany, Egypt, as well as Alert Bay, Canada's most northerly outpost. In addition to his United Nations peacekeeping medals, Allie was awarded the Canadian Forces Decoration with Clasp, Queen's Jubilee, Canadian Volunteer Service, and NATO Service. Freddie, the sole surviving brother, had seen an article in Legion magazine about banners that were being made up by the town of Sackville, New Brunswick, to remember their war veterans. He decided it would be a very fitting tribute for his family as well, and he had the banners made up and flew them proudly that November. CTV News even came out and did an article entitled 7 Banners for 7 Brothers. Sadly, Freddie only got to see the banners fly once, as he passed away the following summer. His family still carries the tradition on, however, and the 1st of November on Arbuckle Lane, the banners go up again. You should be able to see them there until sometime after Remembrance Day when they'll be taken down.